In our study of the Kena Upanishad, we are approaching the conclusion that the Upanishad is leading us to. And Sri Aurobindo, in his characteristic manner, points to some of the significant hints that will lead us to a deeper understanding of this conclusion. We have seen across the last few discussions how the Upanishad builds a big picture of the whole unfolding of evolution through the many levels of consciousness, through the working of the gods in each of these levels, until it brings us to that final culmination of the whole evolutionary journey. And that is in the realization of that as tad vanam, that delight. The text of the Kena taught us the means of introspection by which step by step we may accelerate this evolutionary process. And only when we have crossed beyond mind, when we have awakened to an intuitive knowledge, when our consciousness has opened to the perception of the infinite knowledge and the infinite consciousness, it is at that point that the Kena brings us to this last step, when it says, the name of that is that delight. As that delight, one should follow after it. He who so knows that, towards him verily all existences yearn. There is another passage from Sri Aurobindo's Thoughts and Glimpses, where he speaks of what the whole evolutionary process. First he describes the beginning, then the middle, and then the conclusion, the end. But in this, there are two portions. First, he speaks of delight. We speak of the Supreme as if he were a mathematician working out a cosmic sum in numbers, or a thinker resolving by experiment a problem in relation of principles and balance of forces. This is how the scientist sees the divine. But also we should speak of him as if he were a lover, a musician of universal and particular harmonies, a child, a poet. The side of thought is not enough. The side of delight too must be entirely grasped. Ideas, forces, existences, principles are hollow molds unless they are filled with the breath of God's delight. You see, at the heart of everything is this delight, and everything is a mold for the delight, even the highest thought, forces and ideas. The most essential principles would be meaningless unless they were filled with the delight. And so he gives us this picture of the universe, of the delight hidden inside everything. Now, if it is hidden inside, what is its purpose? Obviously, to flow out from within. So each of these ideas, forces, existences, principles are meant to become molds and vehicles through which progressively that delight will gradually creep out. So another verse, I'm skipping a few, another of these statements. If idea embracing force begot the worlds, delight of being begot the idea. So if idea embracing force gives birth to the world, what gives birth to the idea? Delight of being. Because the infinite conceived an innumerable delight in itself, therefore worlds and universes came into existence. Consciousness of being and delight of being are the first parents. You see, we have many parents, including our biological parents. But the first parents are consciousness of being and delight of being. Also, they are the last transcendences. When you ascend the cosmos and go back to the source, they are the last transcendences. Therefore, delight is the highest form of Brahman. And he explains the unconsciousness and pain and all that, where they are in this whole picture. Maybe I'll just read this to complete this statement. Unconsciousness is only an intermediate swoon of the consciousness, or its obscure sleep. Pain and self-extinction are only delight of being running away from itself in order to find itself elsewhere or otherwise. So these are things which are deep aphorisms to dwell upon. What is pain and what is self-extinction? Nothing but delight of being running away from itself for this purpose. And then he says, delight of being is not limited in time. It is without end or beginning. God comes out from one form of things only to enter into another. What is God after all? An eternal child playing an eternal game in an eternal garden. So the rest of the next section is man, the Purusha. It describes how the whole purpose of this play is the enjoyment. But the true enjoyer is the enjoyer within, and how the play takes place between man and nature, and where is the play of the enjoyment. But the next, which describes the end, the section describing the end, he explains how the meeting of man and God must always be an interpenetration of the human and the divine. And then he comes to the core of it. I'm skipping many lines. For those who are keen, this would be a worthwhile study and meditation on each of these verses. But we come to the acme of the knowledge and the purpose of this cosmos. He says, delight is the secret. Learn of pure delight, and thou shalt learn of God. How can you know of God? You can know of God as teacher, as punisher, as authoritarian, as friend, as parent, as many different relations, and many religions build on these different kinds of relationships. But all of those would give you only a glimpse of an aspect of God. If you want to know truly the deepest nature of the divine, then light is the secret. Learn of pure delight, and thou shalt learn of God. And this suggestion, pure delight, you see, delight finally reflects through all the levels of the cosmos, all the way down into our human experience. Although concealed, it is still present. But it is not pure, or it is mixed. Even our human sensory experiences are delight finally, but mixed, clouded, distorted even, reflected at least, delight. But if you can extract the pure essence of delight from the sense experience, learn of pure delight, and thou shalt learn of God. Take an example here. You sit before the ocean. Sit on a high hilltop and look down at the valley. Gaze at the stars. Sit in a beautiful garden. Look at the beauty of the flowers. And as you enjoy that experience, gently peel off the layers of the experience, both external and internal. As you watch the waves, there's a rhythm of the waves. Each wave is different, each is unique, and yet there's a repetition of the whole. And in that play of the waves, there is the play of the energy, which is enjoying. In that, there is the idea, which is fulfilling itself. In that is the creative knowledge, and in that is the pure delight. The pure delight which poured out, gave rise to that creative idea, formed the thought, and drove the energy and created the form. Enjoying through all these layers. And you as if peel back the layers to glimpse that pure delight within. Whatever it is you're dwelling upon. And as you enjoy this experience, subjectively also you peel back the layers. Who is enjoying? My senses, my eyes, my physical sensation of it. Such beautiful colors, such wonderful smells and touches. And what is enjoying behind that? The joy of my life energies. My mind which looks at all this and perceives the beauty of it all. And behind that something more essential. And behind that the pure delight of being. Simply to be is the delight, and to be and know and experience all is that delight moving through all these layers. Pure delight. Learn of pure delight and thou shalt learn of God. So in the external movement you will perceive the divine presence playing in things. In the internal movement you will become aware of the divine presence living, inhabiting and enjoying from within. And so this is the secret. Delight is the secret. Learn of pure delight and thou shalt learn of God. And Sri Aurobindo then explains how this delight works. What then was the commencement of the whole matter? Existence that multiplied itself for sheer delight of being and plunged into numberless trillions of forms so that it might find itself innumerably. This was the beginning. And what is the middle? Division that strives towards a multiple unity. Ignorance that labors towards a flood of varied light. Pain that travails towards the touch of an unimaginable ecstasy. For all these things are dark figures and perverse vibrations. So you can see in the intermediate, it is the delight working through all these dark figures to recover itself. And what is the end of the whole matter? As if honey could taste itself and all its drops together. And all its drops could taste each other, and each the whole honeycomb as itself. So should the end be with God and the soul of man and the universe. And this is the most profound of the revelation of where this whole evolutionary journey is leading us to. We are, after all, that honey of the Satchidananda, but a single drop. If honey could taste itself, you discover your own deepest divine being, and that's the divine meeting himself, tasting himself. But not just internally, but it could taste itself and all its drops together. And in each relation, in each contact with each object and form, it is the tasting of the honey, tasting honey. And then, and all its drops could taste each other. Now, if this is the experience of one being enjoying the Satchidananda delight in all relations, each person thus now sharing in that delight. And the third step, and each drop tasting the whole honeycomb as itself. Experience the whole universe as yourself in the totality of the Satchidananda revealing itself progressively. And so should the end be with God and the soul of man and the universe. So you find God within, you experience the soul of man in all these forms, and the whole universe itself as the Satchidananda. And the promise is this whole movement towards a greater harmony. Love is the keynote, joy is the music, power is the strain, knowledge is the performer, the infinite all is the composer and the audience. And we can dwell on each of these and the profound symbolism that is held in this image. And he says then, we know only the preliminary discords which are as fierce as the harmony shall be great. But we shall arrive surely at the fugue of the divine beatitudes. And so this is the meditation on the divine as delight. It is as this transcendent delight that the Brahman must be worshipped and sought. What is your deepest relation with the divine as delight? Obviously one of self-giving and love. We come back to Sri Aurobindo's commentary on the Kena. It is this beatitude, therefore, which is meant by the immortality of the Upanishads. And what will be the result of knowing and possessing Brahman as the Supreme Ananda? It is that towards the knower and the possessor of the Brahman is directed the desire of all creatures. Such was our experience in the contact we had with the physical form of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. In the very approach, one experienced that fulfillment. To whatever extent the container could hold and be filled, they poured. And the delight grew. In those who were more ready, what they poured led to the flowering out of the readiness. You may recall Kapali Shastriyar describing his approach to Sri Aurobindo. He was, as you know, the only person who had already attained to self-realization before coming to Sri Aurobindo, had been through intense tapas and had studied the Veda along similar lines under Ganapati Muni. When he first came in touch with Sri Aurobindo's Arya, he was so inspired, he would read the entire Arya every day, every evening, and wait for the next edition to come, the next issue, and again read that every day. I'm surprised when people say things like, oh yes, I have read Sri Aurobindo's synthesis of yoga or Life Divine or whatever it is 10 years ago. It's such a pity that one has just read through it. But if you see Shastriyar's example, he read again and again each chapter for the entire month until the next issue came and the next chapter. Obviously for a purpose. A man who had attained to so much, who found so much help in that reading, you can imagine what is the value of that reading. Well, when he first came to Sri Aurobindo, his experience was, among other things, when he saw Sri Aurobindo first walking through the guest house, the scene he describes in this luminous golden body. But when he came for the appointment given, as he was climbing up the stairs, all the centers, all the chakras of his being began to flower out and open. Just the approach to Sri Aurobindo's presence. And obviously the readiness in the being was such that this impact could be done. For most of us, the dullness of our consciousness is so great that at best we feel a little uplift, a little high, a little feel good, a little sense of wideness or lightness or joy, and that's about it. But the readiness according to which you came, he poured, even as you approached from a distance. And such we have many descriptions of this kind, of the time spent with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. But you will see naturally, as he becomes center of the divine delight, all creation, all creatures, all beings tend towards that source. And Sri Aurobindo continues, in other words, he becomes the center of the divine delight, shedding it on all the world and attracting all to it as to a fountain of joy and love and self-fulfillment in the universe. When such a being is on earth, in the body, even if unknown in form and name, that shedding of the delight takes place on the world. You notice how it is something quite exceptional. In the last, from let's say 1880s through to 1950s or 40s, there was all over the world such a rich exploration, struggle, idealism, effort of all kinds, a hope, a promise even, of some great possibility, of some great leap, of some new step in human life and progress and so on. In every field, in every space in the world, there was this enthusiasm and seething of possibilities and churning and mixing and all over, widely, sometimes in the most diverse forms. It was not so before, it was not so after. In fact, in the late 40s already, there was a drop and a kind of a cynicism that has set in. And there has been no significant progress since 1950s, either in the sciences or in any other sphere of the arts or creativity. All the great things were done in that earlier phase, of which now we see only permutations and combinations and applications at best. There has rather been a general decline in human knowledge and human standards and values and thought. We are speaking, of course, of the general mass. You see how it coincides with the presence of one such. When the avatar comes upon the earth, there is this whole preparation for the coming because of the very pressure of his approach. And as he enters the physical form, there is this shedding of this energy and light and force and the delight on the whole world. And everything somehow wakes up, not knowing where it's coming from, but it knows it's there. And then when he withdraws, again things fall back. One person is all it takes. In one of his comments in his letters, Sri Aurobindo is asked about, well, how will more people know? Shouldn't there be a need for a wider dissemination and so on? Numbers, in other words. Sri Aurobindo's comment, very direct. He says, when did numbers ever matter? Number of people is not important, even one person. And it is in Savitri he writes, one man's perfection can save the world. That's all it takes. But one man who attains to this, in other words, he becomes the center of the divine delight, shedding it on all the world and attracting all to it as to a fountain of joy and love and self-fulfillment in the universe. And this attracting is not a question of knowing by name or form. It is the turn of the being towards that delight and to the closeness of the divine presence and the promise of the manifestation that you feel within. And so the verse in the Kena goes like this. The name of that is that delight. As that delight one should follow after it. He who so knows that, towards him verily all existences yearn. And you see how much is captured in this single verse. We have dwelt on it across 2 sessions. And having brought us to this, Sri Aurobindo now closes this part of the discussion by saying, this is the culmination of the teaching of the Upanishad. Now this is the culmination, because it has pointed us now to the highest experience. The last step it has shown, this is how you must pursue after. It's the culmination of the teaching of the Upanishad. There was a demand for the secret teaching that enters into the ultimate truth for the Upanishad. And in response, this doctrine has been given. So the text itself of the Kena now tells you this. In the next verse it says, "Thou hast said, speak to me, Upanishad. Spoken to thee is Upanishad. Of the eternal verily is the Upanishad we have spoken." Now, you could ask yourself, why should the Upanishad say this? Remember, the Upanishad does not waste a single word. If it repeats a word, there's a reason. If it does not speak a word, there's a reason. So, why is it bothering to say all this? You asked me to speak of Upanishad, now I have spoken, and of the eternal is this Upanishad spoken. What's the point of saying all this? And we have to go deeper into the verse, what it's actually saying. And that's what Sri Aurobindo is hinting at when he elaborates on this. There was a demand for the secret teaching that enters into the ultimate truths for the quote-unquote Upanishad. Now the word Upanishad itself, Sri Aurobindo is defining like this, as the secret teaching that enters into the ultimate truth. This is the definition of the word Upanishad. The secret teaching. It is not a teaching which is given obviously. That means everything you have read, if you have understood the words in its obvious sense, you have not got the teaching. The teaching is what is behind the words. That's the secret teaching. And the secret teaching is given, which teaches, which enters into the ultimate truth, not one of the superficial or intermediate truths. And so each of the verses, if you find a layer of meaning which is deeper, well, go deeper. Keep on going layer by layer in each verse until you reach the ultimate, beyond which there is no more. That is the ultimate truth to which it points. So the structure of the Upanishad is such. There are words which build a certain sequence, but in each of the verses there is a depth and multiple layers. As you complete the first journey, you've been brought to a certain level of perception, which now allows you to see deeper behind each of the verses, and you reread them for their next level of meaning. And now you come to a deeper experience, knowledge, consciousness, which allows you to go still deeper and so on. That is why you are asked to dwell upon the Upanishad. Now, the definition of the word Upanishad, as you will see in textbooks, on Wikipedia, in dictionaries, Upa, close, Nishad, seating. Sit close. So, as they will normally say, you sit close to the teacher and the teacher reveals to you, and that's Upanishad. It was a teaching, in the forest you sat close, there were noises, there was wind, there were sounds of the animals, so you sit close to the teacher. And obviously that is the most superficial and silly meaning. Sri Aurobindo has already told you what the full meaning, deeper meaning is, the secret teaching that enters into the ultimate truth. But now let's go to the etymology. Upa, Nishad. Even if you take it as sitting close to what? It is the approach, not so much sitting, approaching and dwelling. What do you approach and dwell in? To the self. And so the whole Upanishad is the dwelling and approach in dwelling to the self, which is the teacher. We are the disciple and the self is the teacher. And it is the self in whose closeness we sit. And in sitting, of course, it's not a static condition. You sit where you are, but then you grow in approach, which is a state of being seated. But grow in approach to the self. And now you reread the verse and you see what it says to you. Thou hast said, speak to me, Upanishad. Who said this? We. said, so the self or the teacher is telling you, you said, speak to me of the Upanishad. And Sri Aurobindo put a footnote here. Upanishad means inner knowledge, that which enters into the final truth and settles in it. So there's this double movement of the approach and the being seated in that deeper truth. So when he says, you said to me, speak to me Upanishad. You said, that is the disciple first asked. And then the disciple said, speak to me, to the self. And then it says, spoken to thee is Upanishad. See, there are three stages of the journey. If you did not first call, if you did not first strive for the knowledge, even if this knowledge was given to you, where is the vehicle to receive? Your first call sets the foundation which allows you to receive. But then, the nature of your call defines what you will get. So it's not enough, I'm aspiring. For what? I'm aspiring to have a comfortable life, to solve my immediate problem. Well, that's all you will get. Thou hast said, first step, speak to me Upanishad. That is, reveal to me this inner knowledge into which I can enter and settle in. And since you asked for that, spoken is Upanishad. Now, speech, remember, has a very different sense in the text. It started with, in the first verse, what is that which is the speech of our speech? Remember? By whom impelled is this word that men speak? Now, having come to the conclusion of the text, if it uses the word speech, obviously it's not speaking of the words spoken by the Rishi. It is speaking of that speech of the speech to which you were led earlier. So it is Brahman articulating himself to you, revealing himself to you. It is the full imprint of his self-revelation as an experience that is given to you. That's the sense in which we understand when it says, spoken to thee is Upanishad. You see how profound the whole meaning is. And when you see it in the context, in the sequence, it's obvious that this is what they're saying. Thou hast said, speak to me Upanishad. Spoken to thee is Upanishad. Of the eternal verily is the Upanishad that we have spoken. The knowledge revealed is that the experience given is of the eternal. And then the next verse, two more verses remaining, which also Sri Aurobindo comments on, but we simply read it for now and dwell upon it next time. Of this knowledge, austerity and self-conquest and works are the foundation. The Vedas are all its limbs. Truth is its dwelling place. So in revealing the Upanishad, it is telling you what you need to build for yourself as the basic vehicle that will allow you to receive the full imprint of experience. What is your requirement? Austerity, self-conquest, and works are the foundation. Vedas are the limbs. Truth is its dwelling place. And the last verse of the text, he who knows this knowledge smites away evil from him, and in that vaster world and infinite heaven finds his foundation. Yea, he finds his foundation. It is a celebration of this attainment. So of this, Sri Aurobindo's commentary, Sri Aurobindo's commentary, this is the culmination of the teaching of the Upanishad. There was a demand for the secret teaching that enters into the ultimate truth for the Upanishad. And in response, this doctrine has been given. It has been uttered. The Upanishad of the Brahman, the hidden ultimate truth of the supreme existence, its beginning was the search for the Lord, master of mind, life, speech, and senses, in whom is the absolute of mind, the absolute of life, the absolute of speech and senses. And its close is the finding of Him as the transcendent beatitude and the elevation of the soul that finds and possesses it into a living center of that delight, towards which all creatures in the universe shall turn as to a fountain of its ecstasies. So this we will dwell upon, the conditions, the requirement for us to be able to attain to that, to be able to receive this knowledge experience. And after that, there will be one more chapter still where Sri Aurobindo will give us a broad picture of what is this leading to and setting a large context to this. So it's a theme worth meditating upon, and we hold once again that one idea. The name of that is that delight. As that delight, one should follow after it.